Yo, what's up guys? So today we are gonna see, what if Naruto becomes the new Master of Female Alucard, and she gleefully obeys him, Part 2. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, Seeker Pendragon, link is in the description, and also subscribe to my channel, and like this video. Let's begin the video. Inuzuka Kiba growled in frustration, as he was once again thrown harshly against the ground. Dust kicked up, as dirt settled itself upon his frustrated form. He grit his teeth, as he heard the jeers and taunts of his classmates as they told him to give up his match. But he couldn't, as this was both about his pride, and this was one of the tests he had to at least perform well in if he wanted to pass the academy, seeing as it was the day of graduation. His partner Akamaru was laying beside him, the pup whimpering, as bruises littered the dog's small body. "Akamaru, get up, we can win this," Kiba said fiercely, determination in his eyes, as she stood unsteadily to his feet. A moment later he was thrown off his feet, and landed harshly on the ground again. Kiba panted heavily, his vision blurring, as a trail of red liquid rolled down his head. He glared angrily at his opponent, only for cold sapphire blue eyes to glare back into his eyes. His opponent had golden blonde hair that reached past his shoulders, his ponytail that he once had been gone in favor of letting his hair flow free. 2 bangs framed his face, along with a few bangs swaying into both his eyes, blocking just a small portion of them. Whisker marks being etched upon his cheeks, a deep scowl on his face, as he regarded the Inuzuka with cold neutrality. The blonde was not wearing the usual yukata clothing that he was seen in so frequently, instead opting to wear a strange set of black robes. The robes consisted of a light blackish-gray long-sleeved hooded shirt with a sleeveless orange leather wrapping, trousers, leather calf braces, leather wrap-arm bracers, a black sleeveless surcoat, and leather footwear. Jedi adventure robes from Star Wars: The Force Unleashed, with the exception of the robes being black, along with orange attributes. The blonde himself did not have any injuries, or even a speck of dirt on him. It reminded Kiba that not once was he able to lay a single hand on the blonde. "Is that all, Inuzuka? I am expecting better from a clan heir," Naruto coldly stated, his statement being heard clearly despite the cheering roars of the blonde's fangirls. Kiba clenched his fist, as he heard the subtle disappointment in the blonde's voice, his teeth clenching, as he tried fruitlessly to think of a way he could turn this around. He heard Naruto scoff, and shake his head. "I suppose this is the best the Inuzuka clan can offer. How disappointing, I was expecting more of a fight." The blonde began. "How a weakling such as you believes he can become a notable shinobi is laughable. At best, you won't even survive your first B-ranked mission, as you are now. How pathetic you are. Perhaps a cat can give me a better fight," Naruto coldly finished, the taunt being heard throughout the entire training grounds despite the loud cheering. Kiba felt his anger increase, as he stood, giving the blonde an expression of rage, as his fists clenched. Seeing this, Naruto gave a small sadistic smirk. "Well now, it seems like you have a bit of a bite left on your bark. I'll be sure to rectify that," he stated, a hint of approval in his eyes before it vanished. Kiba growled, before he charged at the blonde, Naruto merely standing in the same spot regarding him with boredom. Once close enough, Kiba began attacking the blonde with a flurry of swipes. However, the blonde dodged all of them, hardly ever giving the Inuzuka even the chance to hit him. Off to the side, overseeing the match was Iruka and Mizuki. Iruka was watching the fight with slight worry, but otherwise he was putting down the results, while Mizuki was glaring at Naruto, his eyes drilling a hole into the blonde's head. Iruka tapped his pencil on the desk once, idly putting down another mark, as Kiba was yet again thrown to the ground by one of Naruto's kicks. Iruka winced in sympathy, idly rubbing his leg, as he remembered how strong Naruto's kicks were when he sparred with him a few minutes ago. He once again looked at the 2 of his soon-to-be former students. Kiba had already scored enough points to pass, while Naruto himself had gotten perfect marks, just as he had on the written portion of the exams. He sighed briefly. The sparring part of the second course of the exams was set into 2 portions. 1, the student would spar with the teacher, and if they impressed the examiners enough, or if they scored enough points, then they would pass. The second part of the second exam was to set them against their peers, while they had already gauged their skill levels by sparring with them personally. The second part was meant to see if they were willing to truly fight against someone they knew, and if so they wanted to know to what extent they would go. This was meant to prepare them if one of them went rouge, that way they would have an easier time in combating them, as they had in a sense already hardened themselves for a confrontation against former comrades. Based on what he was seeing at the moment, Kiba was willing to fight, but at the same time just a bit hesitant, while Naruto himself was perfectly willing to break a few bones, as throughout the entire fight, Naruto had only attacked Kiba in vitals areas, but he could tell the blonde was holding back so he didn't permanently damage the Inuzuka. Thinking about Naruto made Iruka release a small sigh, as he once again sent the blonde a mildly worried look. Over the last few years, Iruka had tried to get to know the blonde, trying to find any type of common ground that they could base a friendship on. Unfortunately, all his efforts were unsuccessful. The blonde either ignored him completely, or glared at him until he went away. That, and the blonde barely ever went to class. Most of the time he never attended the academy, or he would just skip all his classes, making it difficult to speak with the blonde. Iruka had to resort to speaking with Naruto at the ramen stand, as that was the only place he would ever find the blonde. He had tried to go to Naruto's apartment, but he couldn't, as he always had the feeling of impending death every time he got near it. The blonde himself had yet to gain any type of friends either, and while he may have been seen occasionally speaking with Abirame Shino had confirmed that they were not friends, but instead acquiesces. Naruto was also seen exchanging a small nod of respect with Uchiha Sasuke, the last of the Uchiha clan, and runner-up for Rookie of the Year, with the title itself belonging to Naruto. Iruka had managed to gain some type of common ground with Naruto, but the blonde still remained distant towards him. He no longer gave Iruka any glaring looks, instead them being of cold neutrality. He did speak with Iruka, but those exchanges were little, and quick, with the blonde always ending the exchange only moments after speaking with him for but a few moments. While he was dismayed at having very little progress with the blonde, the progress he made was progress nonetheless, and Iruka was happy to have made progress at all. Iruka was shaken from his thoughts, as he heard Kiba yell out in pain. Quickly looking forward, Iruka was met with the sight with Kiba kneeling in front of Naruto, Inuzuka's fist being held in Naruto's hand. The blonde was gripping the Inuzuka's hand tightly, and was twisting it, making Kiba yell out in pain, and forcing the Inuzuka on his knees. Inuzuka's nose was also bleeding, and Iruka was worried that his nose was possibly broken. Quickly, Iruka shot from his seat, and raised his hand. "Match over. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto," he shouted. Immediately after that, Naruto released Kiba from his grip, the Inuzuka falling to the ground, and cradling his hand, and blood from his nose dripping to the ground, as Akamaru slowly trudged towards his partner. If anyone paid attention, they would have noted that the blood that was dripping to the ground near Naruto's shadow, the droplets would immediately disappear, as the shadow seemed to absorb them. Naruto merely gave Iruka a blank look, making Iruka gulp just slightly. Finally, after a moment, Naruto gave Iruka a brief nod before he walked back to his favorite spot near the edge of the training ground, where a tree stood. The blonde quickly jumped on one of the many branches, and sat down, his legs hanging off the sides, as he leaned against the tree's bark. Naruto's impassive eyes gazed upon the training ground, as Kiba was led out, the few medical shinobi around giving the Inuzuka whatever medical attention they could. He gazed upon his classmates, he made contact with Sasuke's onyx black eyes, and he found himself giving the Uchiha a small nod, with the Uchiha returning it. He briefly shut his eyes, and turned his head away from the field. "Alucard, have you been able to make contact with the Kyuubi yet?" Naruto asked. It was silent for a moment before Alucard's voice sounded through his mind. "Unfortunately no, master. The beast is still not responding to my calls. I still do not understand why you do not let me purge him from your body," she answered, a small scowl adorning her features. "I wish to speak with Kyuubi-san a bit more than we did last time before coming to my own conclusions about him, and I wish to know just why the Yondaime chose me to hold him. Right now, only the Sandaime knows why, and the Kyuubi himself may know why, as well." "Of course, master." While on the subject of the Kyuubi, Naruto still found it difficult to believe that such a creature resided within him. That, and it was also the day when he learned of Alucard's ability to view the memories of other living beings by drinking their blood. Of course, he had asked Alucard why she was keeping such a thing from him, as he could have used that particular ability to learn many more things considering all the knowledge that Alucard had stored within her, not to mention the few jonin she devoured. As it turned out, Alucard had several reasons as to why she didn't reveal to him her memory absorption ability. The first being that she wanted him to find out on his own accord, as her previous masters had done before. While she would do anything to help him, she wanted him to be able to discover facts of his enemies and allies of his own accord to help him grow. Learning of her memory absorption was something of a test. She had also occasionally dropped hints for him to figure out, and as expected of him, he found those hints she always left behind. She used the same method she used on her previous masters. Whenever they had a mission for her, she would always return, leaving behind small and subtle hints of her memory absorption power. Hints such as knowing where they placed their secret vaults, other valuables, or just doing things that she knew that they knew she was never able to do before. With Naruto, however, she had to do it differently, as the blonde never kept secrets from her. As such, she had to do something else to drop the hints for him. Those hints she used while sparring with Naruto during their training. Occasionally, she would suddenly switch to a fighting style that she was sure that made Naruto confused, as he had seen those styles before. From there she would start to use tactics from the people she devoured. It took Naruto a while, and no small amount of observation, but he was finally able to put the pieces together. He had his suspicions, as he did in fact note the random different styles that Alucard employed. His suspicions were later confirmed, as he noted that Alucard knew the lock combination to a safe that was kept in the back of one of the stores that usually kicked him out. The owner of the store was just about to violently kick him out, but Alucard had quickly intervened, and devoured the man before he could do such a thing. Naruto was glad that it was night that time of day, and, as such, most of the villagers were asleep. From there, he watched, as Alucard just turned around, opened a secret compartment behind a painting, and unlocked the safe with hardly any difficulty. That was when it clicked for the blonde. Later back in their apartment, Naruto had asked if she truly had a memory absorption power, to which Alucard grinned, and confirmed. The second reason why she didn't tell him of her ability was that she did not enjoy using that power when she drank the blood of a villager within the village. When asked why, Alucard had explained that while she could block out the memories in the blood if she so chose, if she wanted to delve deeper with the memories to learn more, she would have to first go through all the more recent memories, as those memories would be the most powerful of the among the rest. She also explained that some of the more recent memories were of them plotting to make his life miserable, or hurting him in general. She had explained that while hardly anything bothered her, as she was the very definition of the word monster, she did not enjoy viewing the memories of her master being hurt, as that would send her into a type of blind rage. Not to mention when she heard of the plans they usually made to harm him would send her into an even more rage-induced state. She had even caught a glimpse of how a man was very much planning on raping her master back then. Since that time, she had been blocking out the memories of each of the villagers she consumed, hardly ever giving them any type of thought. Naruto had no response to that, but he still could not overlook how useful her memory absorption power was. Eventually, Naruto asked if it were possible for Alucard to connect her mind with his, to make it possible that he could control the memory influx, something that made Alucard curious, as she had never tried it with her previous masters. The two quickly tested it to see if it were truly possible. The results were interesting, as they had immediately ended up in the middle of Konoha, yet there was not even a single trace of any living being. They had also noted the strange sight of nearly no one walking the streets of Konoha. Not even a single trace of life could be spotted. They had noted that there were people, yes, but they did nothing, just standing in the same spots with blank faces. They had left for Hokage Mountain to gain a better view, and to think on the strange happening, although Alucard had a few minor suspicions. When they got to the stairs that led up the mountain, they noticed a steel door off to the side that no doubt led inside the mountain, and their curiosity won out, and they investigated. Naruto would never forget the first meeting he had with the Kyuubi itself. He was very much glad that Alucard was with him that day. "What is this place?" Naruto asked, his eyes cautiously looking around the dark area, his eyes not being able to see even a single foot in front of him. Beside him, Alucard looked around curiously, her eyes having already adjusted to the darkness around her. "We know we are inside the mountain, but where in the mountain is the point? Be careful, master, there is a hole in front of you," Alucard pointed out, grabbing her master by the hand to prevent him from moving forward. Naruto nodded in thanks. "Thank you, Alucard. Perhaps it is better for you to hold on to my master," Alucard stated. Naruto agreed, and with that the blonde found himself letting Alucard take the lead, holding her hand, as she did so. The duo continued walking through the pitch-black darkness for what seemed to be hours, before finally lighting was gradually being returned, and Naruto's vision was restored, as they reached a large room with a fair amount of lighting. A positively massive cage stood before them, the bars being a bronze color, chains protruding from the walls, and crossing against the bars. Sharing a glance with his monstrous servant, Naruto moved forward, Alucard beside him. As they got closer to the cage, they felt as if they were being watched, Alucard looking around them with narrowed eyes, as the blonde's eyes quickly turned cold. When they were but a foot away from the cage, Alucard suddenly sprang forward in front of Naruto, her arms spread out in a protective stance, as a claw. That suddenly forward from the cage stopped, but a mere inch from her eye. Naruto's cold look increased, while Alucard merely grinned widely, her eyes shining with bloodlust. Before their very eyes, a pair of crimson-red eyes opened, and glared down at them with hate and loathing. "If only you were an inch closer, then my claw would have pierced that skull of yours. Although I highly doubt that would kill you, wouldn't it be a vampire?" A deep, growling, and menacing voice spoke. "I'll be sure to step closer next time, that way I can teach you why you shouldn't make such violent movements towards my master," Alucard stated, still grinning, her scarlet eyes glaring murder at the massive creature. Behind her Naruto was giving the massive creature a glare, his ice-cold eyes staring daggers into the crimson orbs hovering above them. "You sound like a confident bloodsucker, but even with all your power you wouldn't be able to defeat me. I am a being who could destroy mountains and cause natural chaos with but a swipe of my tails." The voice once again growled out, although a dark twinge of amusement could be heard. I don't know that I am pretty powerful myself. Granted, I don't have the raw power needed to destroy a mountain, but still, I have a habit of not dying. I wonder how you will deal with that. Alucard shot back, her fangs glinting. We'll see about that habit of yours after I blast a Bijudama in your goddamn face. Naruto's eyes adjusted a bit more to the dark, and he could see the nearly hidden visage of the massive creature before him, an Alucard. The crimson-red slitted eyes that expressed raw anger, and a hint of hatred. Dark orange fur, rabbit-like ears that stuck out, a human-like torso, and finally 9 tails lazily flowing behind it. Naruto only had one thing to say about the creature before him. "Kyubi, I had suspected that you were never killed," the blonde murmured, catching the fox's attention, as it shifted eyes from Alucard to Naruto. Alucard made sure to stand more protectively in front of the blonde, seeing the fox focus on her master. "Oh, you suspected that I still lived? Tell me, why would you think that?" the Bija asked, a hint of curiosity seeping into his tone. The books in the academy that speak of the Bija, they always said that a Bija was unkillable, that they could not die. Yet we were also told that the Yondaime Hokage killed a Bijou. I knew that one of them was entirely incorrect, so I always had a suspicion that you were still alive. Naruto explained, making Kyubi raise an eyebrow in interest, and Alucard grinned at her master's observations. "But to think that you were sealed inside Hokage Mountain, I did not expect that." Kyubi grinned, amusement seeming to dance around in Bijou's eyes. "This is not Hokage Mountain." "Well, it is. It's just not in the real world," he cryptically said. Naruto narrowed his eyes, his mind trying to solve Kyubi's cryptic words, while Alucard was able to realize what the Kyubi was implying. She sent her master a small glance, wondering what his response would be. Either way, she would stand by her master to the end. Naruto continued to put the pieces together one by one. The glares of the other villagers, their murmured curse of the demon brat, how he and Alucard first found themselves in this place to begin with. The question that Naruto had wondered for the first 7 years of his life had finally been answered. Right when he did not care about the answer anymore. "You are sealed within me," Naruto murmured slowly, the small light in his sapphire blue orbs dimming, a perfectly blank expression on his face. Kyubi watched the blonde with interest. He could use this to his advantage. "Yes, I am. The pathetic humans of this village believe you to be me. All their abuse, their anger, their grief, their hatred, they took it all out on you to get to me. A waste of time if you ask me, since I was not affected by what they were doing at all," the 9-tailed beast stated, dark amusement in his rumbling voice. "Do you want revenge? Remove the seal, and I'll grant you the power you will need to obtain your revenge." Naruto remained where he was, raw rage and anger burning within his eyes as his teeth clenched together. He took a single step forward. Alucard's hand came upon his shoulder, as her scarlet eyes stared into his recently turned crimson. "Master, do not let this beast's words control your actions through your anger. Remember that no matter what you do, no matter what others may think of you, no matter who calls you a monster, remember that I will always remain by your side. I said that I would be the embodiment of your rage, hatred, and anger, and I am still a master. If it is your hatred and rage you must release, then I shall vent it for you. A beautiful creature such as yourself does not need to be influenced by this loathsome beast. Allow me to be your instrument of hatred. Allow me to place this beast in its place." Naruto stared into Alucard's eyes, his crimson eyes gradually fading back to blue, as he stared into her scarlet orbs. Her expression is soft and loving, her presence dark, but comforting. He saw a hint of approval in her eyes as his anger dimmed, but was still burning just beneath the surface. "Alucard, I had no intention of listening to Kyubi. I was merely going to slap his claw away from you." "Thank you, Alucard. Your words have calmed my anger down," Naruto calmly stated, his voice level and calm, his eyes glaring icebergs into Kyubi's crimson eyes. Kyubi snarled, his eyes glaring at the two, as they faced him in unison. "That damned vampire, and that impudent brat." He was going to rip both to shreds when he got out this god-forsaken seal. "Now then, Kyubi-san, why are we here?" Naruto coldly asked. Kyubi growled softly, his crimson eyes staring daggers at both the blonde and raven-haired vampire. "Obviously. I brought the two of you here." He huffed. "Why?" Alucard asked in curiosity, wondering what such a beast would want with her precious master. "I couldn't help but overhear your little memory absorption problem. So being the generous and kind being that I am, I decided to lend you my aid in solving this problem of yours." Naruto raised an eyebrow as he mulled over this interesting turn of events. He could accept Kyubi's help and use the full extent of Alucard's memory absorption to its fullest. "However, what would you like in exchange?" the blonde asked warily, as Alucard sneered at the Kyubi with a twisted grin. If the beast asked for her master to remove the seal, then she would happily put the beast in its place for daring to ask her master of such a thing. The Kyubi gave off a deep rumbling chuckle, one that had Alucard sneering at with a growl. How dare such a beast laugh at her master? Her fingers twitched, as she resisted the urge to start a fight with the beast. Unless her master gave her the order, she would remain docile. If I hadn't observed you for as long as I have, I would have demanded my release from this accursed seal, as compensation. But I know you are made of sterner stuff, and I know that you wouldn't release this seal even if your life depended on it. So instead I'll ask for something different. I am well aware of the vast land that is outside of this mountain. I want to be able to both see and feel it. Find a way to get me, or this damn cage outside this mountain, and I'll help you with your problem. Naruto narrowed his eyes, warily eyeing the bijou, as he tried to think of a reason to refute the bijou's help. Don't get him wrong. He knew that he would need the bijou's help at one point. He just didn't expect it to be this soon, nor did he expect the Kyuubi to be the first to instigate this meeting of theirs. What will it be, boy? My patience wears thin, Kyuubi growled. Alucard sneered. My master shall answer when he wishes to, not when you demand a beast. Kyuubi snarled. It seems that the boy needs to learn to put a tighter leash on his pet. Alucard smirked. At least the master allows me freedom unlike you, she said in a smug tone, her smirk stretching widely, as the Kyuubi's claws suddenly shot out. Thankfully the claws were held back by the bars, and they only reached an inch away from Alucard's eyes. The no-life queen gave a malicious grin, as the shadows began writing, her eyes glowing an eerie red, as the seals on her hands glowed. The girl was giggling menacingly, as she slowly brought her hands together with a rectangular shape forming in the middle. It is obvious that hardly anything will faze you, Kyuubi-san. However, how will you handle this? She asked menacingly. She glanced behind her, Scarlet staring into impassive Sapphire. Master, I am your weapon and shield. I may slay millions in your name, be they innocent or guilty, however it is you who must give the order. Please, allow me to show this loathsome creature the proper respect he should bestow upon you. Allow me to show this beast that he should not demand any deals with you. That instead he should bow beneath your heel. That he should be grateful for even having the honor of being sealed inside you. Alucard exclaimed, a hint of insanity in her eyes. Naruto remained impassive, looking at Alucard, then at the Kyuubi who was still sneering in his direction. Humming slightly, Naruto stepped forward. Kyuubi-san, your terms are agreeable. However, I wish to add something else to our little deal, he said, making the Kyuubi raise a brow, and Alucard to take on a curious expression. And that is? When I call for it, you will supply me with both your aid and power. Naruto answered, expression final, as he glared at Kyuubi. Kyuubi's eyes widened slightly, and he growled. True. This would be beneficial to him if the blonde uses his power. Scratch that. It would be extremely useful in aiding him in his escape. But the mere thought of the boy using his power under his command, and not under his influence, was a blow to the bijou's pride. The mere idea of him offering the blonde power at his beck and call, he refused to allow it. Absolutely not, Kyuubi snarled. Naruto stared at the Kyuubi for several moments before he huffed. Looking at Kyuubi with glaring eyes, Naruto spoke. Is that your final answer? His answer was a growl. I see, Alucard. Alucard grinned, her grin showing off her fangs, her hair moving wildly, as her eyes practically glowed with insanity and glee. Darkness overtook her entire form, leaving only her eyes to be visible. Soon, hundreds of more eyes opened, each of them expressing the same glee and insanity. With Alucard's next words, and what happened after that, Kyuubi experienced an emotion that he had only felt once in his few hundred years of life. A feeling that he almost never felt again, and a feeling that he had forgotten it so much that he had forgotten what it felt like. That emotion was fear. Release arc restrictions levels 1 through 3. After that, the Kyuubi was surprisingly more subdued, and agreed to the blonde's terms. Satisfied, Naruto altered his mindscape, allowing the Kyuubi outside the mountain, and him being released from his cage with the exception of the silver collar taking its place on the Kyuubi's neck. After that, the Kyuubi explained that since Alucard could connect her mind with his, that he would destroy any memory fragment that concerned Naruto being harmed in any form or way. With that said, the Kyuubi had immediately told them to take a hike, and promptly forced them out of Naruto's mind. As per their agreement, the next time Alucard attempted to delve into the memories of those she devoured within the village, preferably the few shinobi she consumed, they were able to learn various new jutsu for Naruto to learn. Alucard herself was at first interested in the energy known as chakra, but it was merely a curiosity at best. Besides, she always did have her vampiric magic, she hardly needed chakra. It would be useless to her anyway, seeing as she was a living corpse. She did not have a chakra system, as hers would have died out anyways. She was undead, and as an undead, she couldn't nor would she ever unlock chakra. Regardless though, she used the knowledge that she had from the few shinobi she consumed, and the blonde was able to advance even further. He now had a good variety of jutsu he learned, and while he hardly mastered all of them, he could perform them to an exceptional level. His chakra control was surprisingly good despite his Jinchuriki status. While it wasn't that the level needed to become a medical ninja, it was far better than most of his fellow Jinchuriki, although that has yet to be truly proven. To keep up with his chakra control, Naruto made sure to continue performing the tree walking and water walking exercise every morning. The years that went by were quite a small adventure for both Alucard and Naruto. Over their time in the academy, despite him constantly skipping classes or not attending the academy at all, the civilian council had begun seeing the blonde as too powerful, and they feared they were losing control of the demon brat. Numerous times the civilian council has tried to either kick him out of the shinobi program, or to mess with his grades with class. Of course they never did succeed for two reasons, the first being the Sandaime, as when he caught wind of such a thing, he had immediately fired the academy teachers going along with it, and giving the civilian council a harsh talking to. The second reason was surprising, and quite shocking, as well. Shimura Danzo, an elder of the village, also supported the blonde, and often at times he had made it known that he did so, something that shocked his fellow elders, and Hiruzen. The council, along with Hiruzen, had demanded why Danzo's was supporting the blonde-haired Jinchuriki. The civilian council because they refused to believe that one of their elders would support the child, while Sarutobi was more wary and suspicious. Danzo had simply stated that he had no reason to explain himself, as of yet, and he refused to do so, despite Sarutobi demanding to speak with him about the matter. However, Naruto could say without a doubt that he had found an ally in Danzo. Despite his methods, Danzo would prove to be a valuable ally, especially considering their first meeting. However, that was a story for another time. Naruto's attention was drawn back into the present when Iruka blew a whistle, Ino, and a pink-haired girl being the last two students on the field. The two girls were covered in scrapes, but they were otherwise unharmed. Alright everyone, the second portion of the Genin exams is now finished, and now it is time to partake in the final portion of the exam, that being ninjutsu. If you would please just follow me, I'll escort you back into the classroom for the final exam. Naruto sighed, as he decided to wait for the majority of the class to enter the academy building, following Iruka to the classroom. Ino had tried to get his attention by waving at him, Sakura giving a small blush, also giving a small wave to both him and Sasuke, as the black-haired Uchiha passed them. That was another thing about Sakura. She often deviated between the two, cheering on him, as he was partaking in spars, and also cheering on Sasuke when he was spared. However, when they spared against each other, she would freeze, and appeared to have a difficult decision on who to cheer for. Naruto mentally snorted. That girl came from a civilian family, with her father being a retired shinobi. She had potential to be a good medical ninja with her control. But, as Alucard would say, she is nothing but spare blood. Naruto would give her a month. If after a month she didn't prove to be a competent shinobi, she would forever be labeled as spare blood for Alucard to feast upon. He just hoped that Alucard did not gain some of her more outspoken traits should his precious servant decide to consume her. I resent that, master. I would never even think of consuming that girl. As I stated last time, she is the emergency blood supply unless she proves useful. Alucard piped in. Right, Naruto dryly replied. With a sigh, Naruto hopped down from his perch on the tree, and quickly vanished in a burst of speed when his feet hit the ground. He reappeared in front of the classroom, and he casually entered, ignoring the bickering of his fellow classmates, as they all were chattering excitedly about becoming shinobi. How naive these children are. Do they really expect to save princesses, and the nobles often? Truly amusing, yet at the same time aggravating. Alucard once again chimed. Naruto could imagine the grin she had on her face. You can hardly blame them, Alucard. Outside of their homes and village, they have not yet experienced any type of pain that would harden them to the cruelties of life. Naruto responded. True, but that is another reason that I have in my list that makes you both a beautiful and wonderful creature in my eyes. Naruto tried not to smile. Instead he pulled up on his hood, and let obscure his face, his lips twitching only slightly before they stopped. How many reasons do you have now? 2,990, master. Another thing that Alucard had just recently got the habit of doing. She literally kept count of all the reasons why she believed Naruto to be the most beautiful creature, and most wonderful master in her eyes. Naruto did not know when this habit of hers started, and at first it creeped him out. However, he learned to just accept it, and move on. Master, Dolphin, and Dead Man Walking are preparing to begin the final examination. Another thing to note, Alucard loved giving nicknames to everyone. She had named Sakura Emergency Blood Supply, Kiba was named Fido, Shino was named Bugs, Shikamaru was named Sloth, Chuji was named Lard, Ino was named Emergency Blood Supply number 2, no surprise there, Hinata was named Dead Stalker, because Alucard wanted to kill her for stalking her master. She was named Iruka Dolphin, and, as for Mizuki, he was simply named Dead Man Walking. Naruto was inclined to agree. Okay class, we and Mizuki will be calling for your name individually in the next room. Keep in mind that you must perform 3 of the Academy's basic jutsu in order to pass. You can even perform another for extra points. With that said, Iruka called the name of the student, and escorted him out of the class, and into another room. Excitedly, the other genin hopefuls began animatedly talking among themselves. Each of them hopes to pass, and become a proud shinobi. It is very likely that most of the students here will die on their first C-ranked mission, or maybe they'll quit after they've received proper training from the Jonin sensei. Indeed, the only ones who actually stand a chance are the clan heirs, and a few of the ones from civilian families. The rest are mere cannon fodder, unimportant, and forgetful. Naruto responded. My master, how cruel of you, thinking about such things about your comrades, Alucard teased, a slight mock in her voice. While the words may have been scolding, Naruto just knew that Alucard was grinning widely at his words, and that there was a hint of approval in her tone. Master, I'm curious, which team do you believe you shall be in? Good question. I'm the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and rumor has it that Uchiha Madara was able to control tailed beasts with the likes of his Sharingan with but a single gaze. If I'm correct, they will place me on a team with a wielder of the Sharingan, as a precaution. However, there are only 2 people within this village who are in possession of the Sharingan. Uchiha Sasuke, the last Uchiha within the village. However, he has yet to truly unlock the Sharingan. The second, Hatake Kakashi, someone that we know little about, as the memories of the very few Jonin you consumed revealed nearly nothing about the man. At best, the best description we have is that he reads a certain orange book. He's always late, his face is covered 99% of the time, and he is generally lazy. So you believe they will place you on a team with either Duck Boy or the perverted Scarecrow? Yes, although there is a high probability that Hatake Kakashi is most likely going to teach me, seeing as he is lazy. Teaching me will be easier. As Sasuke is an Uchiha, and is the second top student with me being the first, they cannot place me with Sasuke, as he is usually the rookie of the year along with the top kunoichi with the dead last. I doubt they would stop tradition just to have Sasuke on my team. Plus Sasuke is inexperienced with the Sharingan, thus giving even more reason to have Hatake on Sasuke's team, although I doubt it will actually happen. But wouldn't they want the perverted Scarecrow to teach Duck Boy about the Sharingan? Sasuke can easily learn more about his Sharingan from the Uchiha clan scrolls within the Uchiha compound. Besides, Hatake is not even an Uchiha. Thus there are many who doubt that Hatake can use the true power of the Sharingan, despite many claiming that he mastered it. Besides, from what I heard about Elder Koharu and Elder, they are very traditional. They wouldn't set a team with 3 of the best students even if the entire world was being engulfed in the flames of hell. An amusing thought, master. Now I want to watch the world burn. Your need for blood and destruction is duly noted. You'll be able to receive as much blood and destruction as you want once I graduate. I eagerly await for its master. Hey Uzumaki, it's your turn. Naruto blinked slowly, and allowed his eyes to drift towards Sasuke, who was staring at the blonde with indifference. The Konoha headband bared on his forehead proudly. A flash of some sort of emotion went through the young Uchiha's eyes before it vanished. Nodding his head towards the Uchiha, Naruto stood, and walked down the stairs, removing his hood. As he did so, Naruto entered the next room, and his neutral gaze was instantly with the warm gaze of Iruka, and the blank, yet suspiciously glaring gaze of Mizuki. Ah Naruto, just who we were waiting for. It's time for your final test of the Genin exams, are you ready? Iruka asked. Naruto snorted slightly. Was he ready? He had been training for this day since the academy. He could easily defeat a mid-level Chunin, and give a high-level Chunin a good run for his money, but anything higher than that would pose a problem. Nonetheless, the blonde nodded his head, and Iruka smiled. Very well, now I want you to perform the substitution jutsu, transformation jutsu, and the clone jutsu, along with an extra one if you want. Naruto sighed slightly, before he wordlessly performed the substitution without any hand signs, his form being replaced with a chair. It's amazing that you're able to perform the technique with no hand signs, Iruka said in amazement. Naruto grunted, as he returned to his spot, and wordlessly he performed the transformation jutsu again with no hand signs, his form being engulfed in smoke. As the transformation went underway, both Iruka and Mizuki held their breaths, wondering what the blonde would transform into. When the smoke cleared, Iruka could not stop the slight widening of his eyes, while Mizuki openly gaped. Standing in front of the two Chunin was a man with black spiky hair that reached down to his waist, his bangs covering his right eye entirely. He was wearing red armor that consisted of numerous metal plates, and a black bodysuit underneath. His face held a deep scowl, as he looked at the two Chunin. Red eyes with 3 tomos slowly rotated in a slow and hypnotizing manner. Standing before them was a perfect replica of a shinobi that was rivaled only by the Shodaime Hokage, Uchiha Madara, An excellent transformation of Naruto, Iruka stated in slight awe. He idly wondered if that was how the legendary Uchiha Madara really looked, before he shook his head slightly. Knowing that Madara was a shinobi that Naruto admired the most, he knew the blonde wouldn't get the appearance wrong. Although Iruka did worry for the blonde at times. After all, Madara was a traitor to the village, knowing that his soon-to-be former student admired him worried him at times. You may undo the transformation now, Naruto, Iruka said. The replica of Madara blinked, before smoke covered its form, and Naruto stood in its place. Now perform the clone jutsu. This is where Naruto improvised. No matter how good his chakra control was, he knew he would never be able to perform the clone jutsu, seeing as it required that bare minimum of chakra, so he performs another clone jutsu. He was once again glad that Alucard had consumed a jonin, despite the being a low-level one. With a poof of smoke, a perfect copy of the blonde appeared next to him. It should be noted that once again, the blonde did not use any hand signs. Excellent, Naruto, Iruka exclaimed, beaming a grin towards the blonde. You've performed all 3 basic jutsu perfectly, and with no hand signs no less. For such a display, I believe that deserves extra credit. Grinning, Iruka quickly wrote down into his clipboard, and once again smiled at the blonde. Now is there another you wish to display? Naruto narrowed his eyes, and shook his head. Why would he reveal the techniques at his disposal? It was foolish, and foolhardy. Very well then, please return to class, and wait for me and Mizuki to return. Here is your headband, proof of you graduating. Congratulations, Naruto, Iruka said with a large smile, handing the blonde a Konoha headband. Naruto grabbed hold of the headband, but didn't put it on right away. He looked at it for a moment, before he tied it around his forehead. He made a mental note to change the color of the cloth. You've done it, master. We can no longer be held back by the academy. Now our true adventures begin. I cannot wait, master, Alucard said through their mental connection. Turning away from Iruka and Mizuki, Naruto exited the classroom, grinning, as he looked out the window, a sense of excitement and anticipation welling up inside him. Yes, we are one step closer to our goal, Alucard. The adventures that await us will prove entertaining. I just hope that I am able to enjoy a lot of good fights out of it, Naruto said in response. His grin turned bloodthirsty, as he felt the need to fight powerful opponents, to test himself against powerful shinobi, to fight in life or death battles. Called the blonde slightly battle-crazed, but for some reason he only truly ever felt alive when he was fighting. And of course I shall stand by you to the very end, master. Behind the blonde, his shadow began rising until it began to take shape. In a few moments Alucard's form stood behind her master, her lips pulled back into a wide grin, her scarlet eyes flashing with devotion and undying loyalty to the blonde before her. Her head soon rested on the blonde's shoulder, and her arms encircled around his chest. She inhaled, taking in her master's scent, and she nearly purred, as Naruto's hand gently caressed her cheek. Time to return to class, Naruto murmured, as he quickly regained his composure, the red hue to his cheeks fading, as he went into his blank mask. A hateful look crossed Alucard's face when she gazed down the hallway, her eyes glaring at the door leading towards her master's class. The muffled sounds of excitement annoyed the no-life queen, as she resisted the urge to kill everyone in the room. Alucard. Turning her head, Alucard's eyes stared into her master blue ones. His lips pulled into a small frown, as he gave Alucard a stern look. Rein in your anger and hatred, Alucard. There is a time and a place, and this is not one of them, he stated. Alucard frowned for a moment, before she grinned. One day her master was going to snap, and order her to kill every single being within range. When that day comes, she was going to happily follow that order, and perhaps some villagers from Konoha would accidentally get in the way. Of course, master, the black-haired girl said, as her scarlet eyes shined for a moment. Naruto stared at the no-life queen for several long moments, idly wondering what she was thinking about. While they had a mental connection, he could only get a vague idea of what she was thinking about. Let's just say that it involved a lot of blood. Sighing, Naruto decided not to indulge too much into the matter. Facing the door to his classroom, he began walking towards it, Alucard already melting into the shadows beneath him. He re-entered the classroom, and ignoring all the cheers from his fangirls about him passing, he quickly retook his spot in the back, crossing his arms, and quietly waiting for Iruka to finish testing the other students left. It didn't take long for Iruka to finish testing the stranglers, maybe 30 minutes at best. Now the scarred Chunin was standing in front of the class, smiling at all of them, as they quieted down. Everyone, I want to congratulate you on passing your genin exams. From now on I am no longer your sensei. I am now a superior and comrade. You will face many hardships during your shinobi career, but you must push through, and keep yourself strong. You have all taken your first step into adulthood, and I wish you all the best of luck. I am proud of you all, and I was honored to be able to teach you during your time in the academy. Iruka gazed upon all his former students proudly, and his proud gaze lingered on Naruto's form longer than the rest. Naruto, feeling Iruka's gaze, stared into Iruka's eyes. He noted the proud look in the man's eyes, and he hesitated slightly. How should he respond? He kept his face perfectly neutral, but inside he was a little uncertain. Finally, the blonde sighed slightly. Just this one single time. With that thought, the blonde made sure that his now former classmates weren't looking, and he gave Iruka a small smile. Iruka, seeing the blonde's smile, felt his eyes widen slightly. A warm smile took hold of Iruka's face, and his eyes stared into Naruto's eyes, silently trying to convey a message to the blonde. To Naruto, that message was clear. Be safe, and give it your best, Naruto. Naruto snorted slightly. His face went to his usual mask of cold neutrality, but not before giving Iruka a silent message of his own. You worry too much. Iruka chuckled slowly, before he continued to cast his gaze upon the others. Unseen to everyone, Naruto's shadow bristled slightly. Iruka felt the feeling of impending death, but he ignored it in favor of speaking to his former students once more. Now everyone, come back within the following week to get your team assignments, and once again I'm proud of every single one of you. With that said, the bell rang, and the newly made genins all stood, as one, and exited the classroom. Some give Iruka grateful looks, and others give the scarred Chunin a firm handshake. As Naruto walked past, he merely gave Iruka a nod, with the Chunin returning it. With the Hokage's office, Sarutobi Hiruzen looked upon the gathered jonin before him. Sitting in front of him was a crystal ball that was showing the image of graduating class of students who passed the genin exams. Standing on his right and left side were the elders of Konoha, Hamura, and Koharu. Sandaime was an old man in his 60s, his face carrying many wrinkles, and 3 lines placed vertically under his eyes. His hair that was once black was ash white, slightly spiked, and he had a small beard on his chin. He wore the usual Hokage robes, with the exception of the Hokage hat. So, do any of you have any interest in the students before you? He asked, his voice raspy given his age. The various jonin all thought for a few moments, before someone stepped forward. Hiruzen smiled slightly, as he saw his son, Sarutobi Asuma, step forward. If it's not any trouble, I would like to have Yamanaka Ino, Nara Shikamaru, and Akimichi Chuji, he began. Reasons, Koharu demanded stiffly and curtly. Her lips formed into a stern frown, as her closed eyes somehow regarded Asuma with a demanding gaze. Asuma straightened only slightly, well aware that the elders were not lenient to disrespect, as his father was. The Nara, Yamanaka, and Akimichi clans have always looked out for each other, even during the era of the clan wars, so much so that when the formation of the villages began, the 3 clans joined together, and have always had teams with each other. It is an unofficial tradition between the clans. Plus, they could be the next Ino Shikucho trio, he added as an afterthought. The 2 elders whispered among themselves, with Sarutobi humming, as he whispered along with them. For several long moments the elders and the Sandaime whispered among themselves before they turned their gazes towards Asuma, who stood stiffly and rigidly. Hiruzen smiled at his son, as he spoke. Sarutobi Asuma, your request is granted. Yamanaka Ino, along with Nara Shikamaru, and Akimichi Chuji shall become your genin squad. Asuma visibly relaxed, smiling to himself, as he went back to stand among the other jonin. For the next several minutes another jonin stepped up to claim students for their genin team. Some were rejected, others accepted. In the end, some jonin got the teams they wanted, while others didn't. However, now came for the final 4 students, and now the final 4 students, Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, and Shimano Kigo. Hiruzen stated. Uchiha Sasuke, grades almost equal to Uzumaki Naruto, and the second best student in the academy, a contender for the Rookie of the Year title. Uzumaki Naruto, grades higher than any other student despite missing so many classes. His grades are nearly equal to that of Uchiha Itachi. He was merely off by 20 marks. Haruno Sakura, the best kunoichi of the year, Koharu said, as if she couldn't believe such a thing. It says here her genjutsu is to be noted, as well as her chakra control. And finally, Shimano Kigo, the dead last of the academy. He barely passed. He only passed because of the written portion, and he was able to just barely perform the 3 basic jutsu. The elder woman finished. Seems like there is an odd one out, jonin murmured. Then allow me to fix that, a brash and cheerful voice exclaimed. The jonin all startled in surprise as a woman shoved her way through the crowd. Her purple hair tied into a spiky ponytail, pupil-less brown eyes twinkling with mischief. Her lips were pulled back into a wide grin, as she chewed on a stick of dango. Her outfit consisted of a fishnet shirt, a tan-colored trench coat that concealed her barely covered, and a dark brown miniskirt. The elders bristled in distaste, as they glared disapprovingly at her choice of attire. Hiruzen merely sweat dropped. Midarashi Anko, might I inquire, as to what you meant when you said to allow you to fix our current situation? Koharu asked/demanded. Anko merely grinned. Allow me to take one of those cute little brats as my apprentice. The elders glanced at each other, as the other jonin whispered among themselves. If you take one of them as your apprentice, which one would you choose? Konoha's one, and only Uzumaki Naruto, of course, the purple-haired woman announced with a bright grin. Instantly the atmosphere between the elders shifted, and they silently glared at Anko. Absolutely not, Hamura began, and he continued before Anko could protest. It has always been a tradition to have the Rookie of the Year with the top kunoichi, and the dead last. Did you think that just because there was an odd one out that we would stop tradition? He finished. But surely you can make an exception. You said it yourself that the Uchiha's score was almost equal to Naruto's. I think he would make a fine member for the team while I take Naruto as my apprentice. It'll all even out that way, Anko pressed. Koharu shook her head as she stepped forward. That is not the point of Mitarashi. The point is that tradition must be kept. There can be no exception. Since it is uneven, we shall simply remove Shimano-san from the equation, the elderly woman stated. Perhaps we can let tradition go this one time. A raspy, an elderly cold voice announced. The jonin all started in surprise, while Hiruzen and the elders did not look surprised at all. Danzo, I was wondering when you would reveal yourself, Hiruzen stated, his voice blank and neutral. Out from the shadows of the corner, Danzo stepped forward, his bandaged form gazing upon the shinobi in the room with cold narrow eyes. Even at your old age you are still able to sense me, Hiruzen. Excellent. Just as expected from Hokage, the Warhawk spoke. Danzo, what did you mean when you said, letting tradition go? Koharu demanded. Danzo turned his cold gaze to Koharu. Exactly, as I meant it. While I agree that Shimano will end being possibly useless, there will still be some use to him. Uchiha Sasuke can be Uzumaki Naruto's replacement in the team assignments, while Uzumaki receives apprenticeship. The elders seemed to think so, and Anko grinned, feeling confident that Naruto would be her apprentice. Although Danzo's next words shattered that confidence. However, Uzumaki Naruto will not receive apprenticeship from Mitarashi-san. Danzo finished. What? Anko yelled in anger. Why can't I teach them? She asked, anger filling her voice, as she angrily glared at the bandaged Warhawk. Danzo opened his eyes, and regarded Anko coldly. Do not take that tone with Mitarashi. Respect your betters. He calmly spoke, angering Anko further. As to why you cannot teach Uzumaki, there are a multitude of reasons. In fact, you are not even a full jonin, you are a tokubetsu jonin. You have never had any student claiming that you did not want to teach brats, as you put it. You have no experience when it comes to teaching, thus you'd be an incompetent sensei. Anko looked down. The anger was still burning in her eyes, and her fists were clenched tightly. Despite how much she wanted to argue with Danzo deep down, she knew he was right. Hiruzen looked at the scene with a frown, mentally deciding to speak to Danzo about the way he spoke to his shinobi. Seeing Anko silent, Danzo continued. Uzumaki needs a sensei that surpasses that of regular jonin. The boy is a Jinchuriki. Standard training methods wouldn't work on him. A unique teacher is needed to teach him, someone who has learned dozens of styles and jutsu. Someone who could teach the boy several key things, and someone who can teach the boy about his legacy, Danzo claimed. The room was silent, as everyone processed the information. Most were confused by what Danzo meant when he said his legacy. What did their elders mean by that? However, Hiruzen and the elders, along with a very few jonin, knew exactly what Danzo meant. As it stands, there are only 2 others who meet these requirements. I understand that one of them has already expressed an interest in teaching the boy. Hiruzen nodded true. Unfortunately, however, he is late again, Sandaime said with a sigh. Danzo scowled. Yes, how unfortunate that one of our best jonin still has that habit. I just got here, Sandaime-sama, Danzo-sama. Surely you can give this one little lateness of mine slide. With that said, a puff of smoke accompanied the voice, and when it cleared, the form of a man in his late 20s appeared. He wore the standard jonin attire. His hair was gray, and seemed to defy gravity with the way it stood. Nearly his entire face was covered, leaving only his right covered. In his hands was a very familiar orange book, which received several girls from the females in the room. Hatake Kakashi. The jonin in question looked up, meeting Danzo's cold and stoic gaze. You've a lot of nervous boys, coming here late, and you have the audacity to read that thing in my presence, the elder said in distaste, as he glared at the book. Forgive me, Sandaime-sama, Danzo-sama, but I was on my way over here when. Save your excuses for someone who cares. Hiruzen may tolerate your habits and antics. However, I am not Hiruzen, Danzo interrupted. Danzo, the Sandaime said in a warning tone. Danzo snorted quietly. Very well. As you know, you have the option of taking Uzumaki Naruto as an apprentice. If you choose not to take the boy, then I'll gladly take him as my student. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes. No matter what, he could not allow Danzo to get Naruto as his student. The mere thought of what Danzo might do to the boy chilled him slightly, despite how hardened he was to such things. Kakashi began, stashing his book in his pouch. It's fine, Danzo-sama. I'm perfectly fine with teaching Naruto. In fact, nothing will please me more. Then it is decided. Hiruzen said Hatake Kakashi will take Uzumaki Naruto as his apprentice, while Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and Shimano Kigo shall form Team 7. But wait, Koharu spoke up. Wouldn't it be better to have Hatake Kakashi teach Uchiha Sasuke, in order to teach him about Sharingan? The Uchiha can easily obtain that information about his Dijutsu from his clan archives. Danzo curtly explained, speaking to Koharu, as one would a child. Koharu remained silent at that. However, she bristled slightly. This meeting is now adjourned until the next Genin exams. Dismissed, Hiruzen announced. The various Jonin all quietly left the room, some of them making flashy exits via the body flicker. Kakashi prepared to leave, as well, but he was stopped by a hand on his shoulder. Turning his head, his eyes met with pupilless brown. Let's talk about Kakashi, Enko growled, before they disappeared via body flicker. Hiruzen shook his head at the display, and he turned head to see Hamura and Koharu leaving, as well. Danzo remained where he stood. Once Danzo and Hiruzen were alone, Danzo spoke. May I ask when you are going to dispel the shadow clone that has several shuriken pointed at me? The scared man casually stated. Hiruzen scowled, before a popping sound was heard, and a cloud of smoke cleared from behind Danzo. What are you planning, Danzo? Hiruzen stated. Danzo kept his expressionless facade. I've no idea what you are talking about, Hiruzen. I'm not planning anything. Now if you'll excuse me, there are matters I must attend to. With that said, the bandaged elder made his way out the room. Hiruzen scowled for a moment, before he sighed. He looked at his crystal ball, watching, as the image of Naruto walking through the village with a cold expression. Naruto-kun, he thought sadly. Before he gave a tired sigh, he lit his pipe, and breathed out several plumes of smoke, allowing himself to relax slightly. After several more plumes of smoke, Sandaime set his pipe down, and began to write down some documents on his desk. He had to finalize the teams. He just hoped that Kakashi would be able to bring Naruto out of his shell. With that thought, he brightened slightly, and resumed his work, idly pondering what Danzo was thinking, and what he was planning. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage, a shinobi regarded as the shinobi no kami, and hailed as the professor, carefully examined the picture he held in his hands. The picture was Naruto's shinobi identification. Humming, as he examined it, he looked past the picture, and to the person in question sitting in the chair with a scowl identical to the one in the picture. Stroking his beard slightly, Sarutobi puffed out a few clouds of smoke. Setting down the picture, Sandaime smiled warmly, as he removed the pipe from his lips. An excellent picture you have here, Naruto-kun. Not many managed to keep a straight face when taking their identification pictures. The only ones who kept a straight face, to be honest, were you, Sasuke-kun, and Shino-kun, he told the blonde. Unseen to the Sandaime, Naruto's shadow bristled when he added the kun suffix to the blonde's name. The blonde himself kept his facial expression blank, his scowl lessening a mere centimeter. Nodding his head towards the Hokage, Naruto spoke. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Your praise is much appreciated, he told him. Smiling, Sarutobi placed his smoking pipe back into his mouth. Blowing out a few more clouds of smoke, the Sandaime spoke. You have the headband, your identification. You also have the skills and knowledge. I officially welcome you into the ranks of Konoha Shinobi Naruto-kun. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Do you do this with every new genin? Or am I just special? He asked, a hint of teasing in his tone. Of course you'll always be special to me, Master, Alucard happily told him, sending him a mental picture of her grinning face. Naruto's cheeks colored slightly, before he quickly fought it down. I know, Alucard. Just as you'll always be special to me, as well. Alucard didn't respond, but Naruto knew she was very happy with his answer, as he felt her happiness from their mental link. The blonde was brought out of his mental conversation when Sarutobi chuckled warmly. I usually don't do this, Naruto-kun. You're right about that. You are a special case, however, Hiruzen told him, smiling at the blonde. Looking down at the assorted files in his hand, the Sandaime silently hummed, unaware, as his shadow rose from the ground to take the form of Alucard. Naruto raised an eyebrow when he saw her, but kept silent, curious as to what she was doing. Alucard gave a small wink towards the blonde, before she looked over Sandaime's shoulder, intently gazing at the files he was looking over. Grinning widely, she suppressed a dark chuckle when she read an interesting line. Master, it appears Uchiha-san has a few screws loose, she informed her master. Raising an eyebrow, an interested gleam entered the blonde's eyes. How so? Smiling a bit too widely, Alucard nearly snickered. It says here that he has an obsessive, borderline fanatical need and desire to kill his older brother. It says here there is a 47% possibility that Uchiha-san will leave the village and become a missing nin to hunt down his brother. Sees comrades as a waste of time, and is perfectly willing to kill anyone who gets in the way of his goal in his eyes. The undead female responded. Naruto silently hummed. fairly accurate. What else does it say? Smirking, Alucard allowed herself to quietly snicker. It also says here that Uchiha-san is showing signs of the infamous Uchiha arrogance. It says that once Uchiha-san has unlocked the Sharingan, he will train using only the Sharingan until he reaches the third tomo, in which he believes he'll be able to stand up to his brother on equal footing. Naruto scowled lightly, eyes darkening by just a small amount. Typical of most Uchiha, the Sharingan is a tool, not a crutch to be used constantly. Indeed, master, such eyes, while extremely powerful, end up becoming a liability if you rely upon it for too long, Alucard replied, continuing to lean over Sandame's shoulder. She remained like that for a few moments, before a lock of her long raven black hair swayed into the Sandame's eyesight. Slightly startled at the black movement in his vision, Sarutobi quickly turned around, only to find nothing behind him. Blinking in surprise, Sarutobi darted his eyes around, not noticing a lump disappearing into his shadow. Sighing, Sarutobi turned back around, meeting Naruto's neutral face, as the blonde silently raised an eyebrow at him. Jumping at your own shadow, Hokage-sama? He asked lightly, frowning for a moment. As he closed the file on his desk, Sarutobi chuckled for a moment, as he gave a grandfatherly smile. Yes, it seems like I'm beginning to become senile and paranoid in my old age, Naruto-kun. I'll need a successor pretty soon at this rate. The Sandame chuckled, giving the blonde a small glance at the word successor. Smiling lightly, Naruto spoke. Well then, you'll need someone just as wise and powerful as Hokage-sama. That way, you can enjoy a peaceful retirement without anything to worry about. Chuckling, Sarutobi fondly patted his desk. Yes. Sadly, however, not many shinobi fit the requirements to become Hokage. I can name only 3 with the potential to keep this village strong and stable should I step down again. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Oh, may I inquire as to who those people are? Smiling, Sarutobi saw no harm in answering. Of course not. The first is one of my old students, Jiraiya of the... Although I fear for the bathhouses should he take the hat, he said with a sweat drop. There's also Tsunade, as well, but I fear for the village's money reserves should she take the mantle, he said with a grimace. The final one is Hatake Kakashi, but he doesn't have Kage-level strength just yet. Plus, I doubt he's even interested in the job, he finished with a shrug. Seems like you'll need to wait a bit longer until another more trustworthy shinobi appears within your ranks, Hokage-sama. Naruto spoke. Chuckling, Sarutobi agreed with the blonde. Before any more conversation could take place, the door to the office was thrown open, as a young child the age of 9 barged in. The child gave a battle cry, as he charged at the aged Sandame. Sarutobi only looked at the scene with a sigh, as he boredly took a puff of his pipe. Not even 5 steps into the room, and the child tripped on his own feet, falling face down to the floor. Naruto could hear Alucard's cackles of amusement, as he himself fought down an amused smirk. Hey, what happened? The child asked, tears of pain in his eyes, as he glared at nothing. Seeing the blonde from the corner of his eye, the child pointed an accusing finger towards Naruto, glaring at the blonde angrily. You tripped me, didn't you? Losing his amused smirk, Naruto neutrally glared at the child, as Alucard bristled at the boy for wrongly accusing her master. You tripped over your own feet, child. Don't be so ignorant and foolish as to blame someone else due to your oversight. Naruto responded in kind in a cold neutral tone. Shivering slightly, the boy glared at the blonde. You tripped me. I know you did. Don't lie to me. Because of you I couldn't defeat the old man, he yelled childishly. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto gave the child a look over before he snorted lightly. Alucard laughing at the thought of a child defeating a full veteran legend like the Sandame. As if a child like you could ever measure up to the level Hokage-sama stands for, Naruto said harshly. Of course I am positive that you will reach a level beyond that, master, Alucard chimed. Outwardly not reacting to her comment, Naruto mentally thanked her before he turned his attention to the child in front of him who was gritting his teeth and balling his small fists. I will defeat the old man and become Hokage, and I'll start by beating you. With that said, the child rushed at blonde, his small fists raised, as he was prepared to strike the blood. Snorting, Naruto held out his hand and flickered his finger on the boy's forehead, sending the child tumbling back as he landed on his butt. Holding his forehead for a moment, the boy became angry again as he charged the blonde. Sighing in annoyance, Naruto moved to the side and tripped the boy, making him fall face first to the ground. That time I tripped you, he started lightly. Growling angrily, the child stood and glared at the blonde. Fight me for real, he demanded. Snorting, Naruto gave the boy a cold look. Please, what type of person would ever take a child seriously? When you wear a headband like mine, only then will I consider taking you seriously, he told the boy bluntly. Growling in anger again, the boy stood and rushed the blonde again, giving a battle cry as he did so. Sighing, Naruto brushed the child's fists away and picked him up by the collar of his shirt with a single arm. You never learn, do you? Naruto said with a small glare. Before anything else could transpire, another person barged into the room. The male who barged in wore a blue bandana on his head with the Konoha forehead protector embedded on it. He wore the standard Konoha Jonin outfit, with the only thing truly standing out being the black sunglasses he wore. "Honorable grandson, do not run off like that," Jonin scolded, before he noticed the person holding the boy. Scowling, the man glared at the blonde through his glasses. "It's him, the QB brat," he thought in disdain. Naruto gave a small glance over at the man's direction, before he returned his gaze to the boy in his arms, ignoring Alucard's murmurs of how she was going to kill the man for daring to look at her master with such eyes. "Let me go, jerk," the child yelled, struggling to release himself from Naruto's grip. Scowling, Naruto pulled back his arm, preparing to lightly hit the child on the head. "It appears no one has taught you proper discipline yet," Naruto spoke, voice low, but still audible. "Allow me to be the first one to teach you discipline." With that said, Naruto was prepared to delve his fist into the boy's head. However, he was stopped by the Jonin. "Stop! Don't you dare lay on hand on the honorable grandson. His grandfather, Hokage-sama, will not stand for this." Jonin, smirking when Naruto stopped. "This brat is Hokage-sama's grandson?" Naruto thought, glancing at the Sandaime who was watching the events before him with a neutral expression. Feeling Naruto's grip slacken slightly, the boy grinned. "That's right, so you better put me down right now," the child demanded. "You're just like the rest of them," he thought in disappointment. Looking at the child in his grip for the moment, Naruto snorted before he hit the boy with the head, with his fist lightly. Despite it being light, it was enough for the boy to yelp in pain, as it felt, as if he was hit in the head with a rock. Holding his head in pain in his spot on the ground, the boy looked at Naruto with shock, and a hint of respect. "I could care less if Hokage-sama was your grandmother." The blonde started coldly. Turning to the Sandaime, he bowed lightly, as the Hokage gave the blonde a small smile. "If that is all, Hokage-sama, I shall take my leave." Walking past the shell-shocked Jonin, Naruto stopped at the doorway, glancing over his shoulder to look at the boy still nursing his head. "One more thing, child," he began, causing the boy to look at him. "If you truly intend to defeat Hokage-sama, and become Hokage, might I offer a suggestion?" he stated rather than asked. "Stop tripping your own feet." With that said, the blonde promptly left. Snapping out of his shock after Naruto left, the Jonin grew angry, as spoke to Sandaime. "Hokage-sama, surely you're not gonna let him get away with that," he yelled. Glancing at the Jonin, Sarutobi leveled a hard stare at the child who began squirming at his grandfather's look. "Naruto-kun was right about one thing," he began, taking a puff from his pipe. "Konohamaru, you lack discipline and manners. I know I've told you more than once to never barge into my office while I am meeting with someone." Konohamaru looked down at his grandfather's stern look. "The mere fact that you still do this despite the few hundred times I've told you not to, tells me that I've been far too lenient with you. It also tells me that the tutor I've assigned to you has not been doing his job," he stated, giving the Jonin a glare to which the Jonin paled a little. "Thus it appears that I will have to personally discipline you in proper etiquette and manners," he stated, idly fingering a piece of chalk. Konohamaru idly wondered where his grandfather got the piece of chalk, and what it was for. "From now on, starting tomorrow, you will meet me here at 6 in the morning, and Ebisu, due to your negligence in properly teaching my grandchild, you will do D ranks for the rest of the week," Sarutobi stated, making Ebisu pale in horror. "At 6 in the morning, isn't that a bit early, Gramps?" Konohamaru whined. The boy found out the purpose of why his grandfather had a piece of chalk, as it suddenly sailed through the air, and nailed him straight on the forehead. "From now on, when I am in my office, or when I am in these robes, you will address me as Hokage-sama, understood?" Sarutobi scolded. "But, understood?" the Sandaime repeated sternly. Downtrodden, the boy nodded. "Good. Now then, tell me, Konohamaru, what did I tell you 100 times not to do?" he asked, fingering another piece of chalk. Gulping, Konohamaru answered. "Not to barge in your office during a meeting," he answered. "Correct. And what did you do anyway? Barged into your office anyway?" The chalk sailed through the air, and nailed the boy on the head once again. "Correct. And what are you supposed to do when you wish to enter an office?" Sarutobi asked lightly, Konohamaru watching in horror, as the old Kage began fingering several pieces of chalk. "Knock?" A piece of chalk nailed Konohamaru on the forehead again. "Correct." It was at that moment, Konohamaru realized that it was gonna be a long day. Walking through the streets of Konoha, Naruto gave a small scowl, as he walked past villagers who were content to ignore him completely. Some would have the courage to glare at the blonde, but they immediately looked away when Naruto responded with a cold stare in return. Still scowling, the blonde stopped at a fruit stand, eyeing a few pieces of fruit. The owner of the stand scowled at the blonde, but otherwise did nothing else. Taking an apple, the blonde placed down a bill of Rio before he resumed his trek down the street, content to let the villagers ignore him. "They should all be bending their knees to you, master. Such worms do not deserve to even kiss the ground you walk upon," Alucard said with a small snarl, the blonde's shadow bristling slightly. Naruto did not respond to Alucard's comment, preferring to finish off his apple, as he threw the remains of it in a nearby garbage can. Placing his hands in his pockets, Naruto continued walking through the streets of the village until he reached one of the village's many parks. Glancing around, and seeing a few people in the park, the blonde sat down on one of the benches. Shutting his eyes as he leaned back, the blind sighed as he relaxed. The blonde allowed himself to relax in the silent and peaceful air the park gave off, enjoying, as he felt Alucard's cold presence within his mind grant him warmth. "Master, someone is approaching you," Alucard warned, the shadows beneath the blonde bristling slightly. Opening his eyes, the blonde sighed lightly, as he sat straighter. Moments later, a bandaged elderly man sat next to him. Naruto nodded his head in greeting. "Danzo-san," he said politely. "Uzumaki," Danzo returned politely. It was silent between the two for several long moments, before Danzo finally spoke. "I'm sure you're curious as to who your sensei is, along with your teammates," he stated. Naruto didn't give him an answer, preferring to close his eyes and silently gesturing for him to continue. "Instead of being given a normal team, you shall be placed under apprenticeship under the teachings of Hokage Kakashi. However, I suspect you may have a second sensei." "Merely a hunch I have," Danzo said. Naruto frowned, eyes narrowing slightly. "That doesn't give me as much freedom as I hoped," they murmured. "Look, my plans will be delayed once more," Naruto thought with a scowl. "Fret not, master. I am positive you will be able to complete your plans, regardless of such annoying delays." Alucard spoke. "Your confidence in me is appreciated by Alucard," Naruto responded. "Is that all you wanted to tell me, Danzo-san?" "Among other things," Danzo answered. Reaching into his robes, the elderly man took out a scroll, passing it to the boy beside him. Taking the scroll, Naruto examined it critically before pocketing it. After Naruto pocketed the scroll, Danzo stood. "I shall take my leave now," he said, giving Naruto's shadow a small glance. His eye narrowed just slightly, as he saw a single crimson eye in the blonde's shadow before it disappeared. "Ah yes, Uzumaki's dark angel. That is actually the closest I've ever come to seeing it," he thought. He had always suspected that Naruto had some sort of protector watching over him, but he never had any evidence. He knew something was there watching over the blonde, but he couldn't sense it. It was almost as if it were a lifeless being. The only reason Danzo even knew it ever existed was because of the feeling of coldness and death it radiated, a feeling that made even him shiver in primal fear. Naruto's protector was a truly frightening being. "Uzumaki," Danzo spoke, gaining the blonde's attention. "Your goal is a dangerous path. Some might even say an impossible goal. But I find it admirable, realistic, and very much possible. You can count on the Foundation's support when the time comes," he told him. With that said, the shinobi of darkness turned and walked away. His form became smaller the further he got. "Are you certain we can trust that man, master?" Alucard asked with a grin. "You know the answer to that, Alucard." Alucard chuckled. "Indeed, master. When it's time, we will have Danzo-san's full support, along with his root," Alucard stated, pleased that her master's plans were slowly coming together. "Your plans are coming together perfectly. Soon your ultimate goal shall come to fruition," she said. "I am joyful that I shall be by your side during all of this, master. I cannot wait to see the outcome of your goal. It shall be unlike any other." Naruto kept a blank face, before he gave a small smile. "Yes, my goal is getting closer, and much more possible, and soon, you won't have to hide from others anymore. You can fully be seen by my side when the time comes," he murmured. Glancing at his shadow, he saw Alucard's crimson-red eye gazing upon him lovingly, adoration and devotion in her gaze. "I cannot wait for that day to come," Alucard said. "Neither can I," Naruto murmured, watching. As the eye faded back into his shadow, the blonde stood, a scowl re-emerging on his face, as he resumed his walk through the village. He kept a good pace, as she strode through the village. His steps are light yet strong, fast but paced. During his walk through the village, the blonde knew several villagers were glaring at his back, some whispering about him behind his back, while some others would be brave enough to try and bump into him as he walked. Of course, the blonde dodged most of their attempts by moving out of their way, though for the majority of his walk, Naruto found himself trying to keep Alucard calm, the no-life queen's anger being felt by him through their mental connection. On more than one occasion, Alucard would murmur to herself, whispering about how she was going to paint the entire village red with human blood, and if there wasn't enough blood she was going to gather a shit ton of goat's blood to finish the job. Naruto also did not want to find out what she was going to do with a candy with an eye. Naruto was creative, very creative. After all, before he met Alucard he used to pull the occasional prank, and each of those pranks were creative. Yet he was dumbfounded as to what Alucard could do with a candy with an eye. He didn't want to know, he really didn't. Focusing on keeping Alucard calm, Naruto didn't anticipate that he would bump into someone when he turned the corner. Usually he would have been able to dodge the person he was going to bump into. The problem was that the person wasn't radiating killing intent, so that person was automatically placed on his, not a threat meter. Looking at the person he bumped into, he raised a brow when he caught sight of the small girl rubbing her head, as she sat on her rear. Closely examining the girl, Naruto noted the long dark brown hair that reached past her shoulders, the tan skin she had, and the interesting facial features she had that reminded him of someone he knew. He was simply trying to figure out who he knew that shared her features. The girl seemed to be about 9, and Naruto idly wondered what she was doing wandering the village alone. Keeping a neutral face, Naruto bent down and extended his hand to the girl. The girl rubbed her head for a few moments before she took the blonde's hand. She gave a small yelp of surprise when the blonde lifted her to her feet effortlessly. The girl rubbed her head once more, before she raised her head, and Naruto finally realized who this girl could be related to by the sight of her eyes. Eyes that were a lavender white that had no pupils at all. A Hyuga, and not just any Hyuga. Naruto thought with slightly narrowed eyes. Indeed, master, it's the younger sister of that stalker girl. How interesting, encountering her little sister in such a manner. Alucard chimed, before she gave off a slight demented giggle. Master, she looks like a puppy. I wonder how she'll look all bloody, she said with an insane cackle. Naruto blinked, as he imagined the scene, and found himself shivering slightly at the image. Blocking the image, and placing it into the never-to-be-viewed-again section of his brain, he turned his attention to the young Hyuga in front of him, who had yet to stop staring at him with a blank look. You should pay more attention to your surroundings, little Hyuga. Though I am also at fault for not paying attention as well, Naruto stated. The small Hyuga blinked at him, before she tilted her head slightly. Her eyes examined Naruto's form up and down, before the girl gave a small frown. Are you Uzumaki Naruto? She asked curiously. Yes, indeed I am. I find myself at a disadvantage. You know my name, but I know not of yours, Naruto replied blandly, disinterested in his tone. Ah, the curiosity and innocent nature of a child. It is refreshing, Alucard chimed in. Hyuga Hanabi. My nei-san is Hinata, Hanabi stated. Yes, I figured that. Your facial features are a bit similar, Naruto responded. So what's an heiress of the Hyuga doing wandering around the village? And with no escort no less. She's like a cat master. She probably had an escort, but ditched them or something along those lines. Luckily for her, cats have 9 lives. Alucard once again chimed in, giggling at her little joke. I did have an escort, but I evaded them to further explore on my own, Hanabi answered. Alucard, when Hatake gives me an excuse as to why he's late, tells me a reason as to why he was late. Your uncanny ability to know what a person did before meeting me is impressive, Naruto thought with a deadpan. Alucard chuckled through their mental link in response. Oh, aren't you curious? Have you ever heard the phrase, curiosity killed the cat? Naruto asked lightly, his feet beginning to move him forward. Hanabi kept pace beside him, as she spoke. Yes, I have. But it's my understanding that the cat was brought back due to satisfaction. Naruto smirked slightly, hand raising to ruffle Hanabi's head. Meanwhile he did his best to ignore the feeling of jealousy that he felt from Alucard. A clever comeback. He congratulated me. Hanabi nodded in thanks, her pupilless eyes staring at the blonde intently, as they resumed their walk. Various other villagers looked on in surprise, as they saw the young princess of the Hyuga clan walk alongside the object of their hatred. So little Hyuga, any particular reason why we are going in the same direction? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. Hanabi briefly activated her Byakugan, the veins in her eyes bulging, as she briefly explored the area around them. The young heiress was unaware of a single eye opening in Naruto's shadow, the crimson eye watching the girl's bulging veins in interest. Truly curious. It makes me wonder if that is painful. Wouldn't you agree, master? Alucard asked in curiosity. Wordlessly, Naruto nodded. He wondered if Hyugas ever experienced any sort of pain from activating their eyes. After all, veins bulging in your eyes could not be healthy. I am avoiding my escort. Right now they are a few blocks away in the direction we came from, Hanabi finally answered, deactivating her eyes. Oh, and you're going in the same direction I am because? Naruto once again asked. I figure I may, as well, learn something while I am avoiding my escort, Hanabi answered curtly. She truly is like a cat master, a very curious child, Alucard chimed, amusement dancing in the eyes of the vampiric girl. Naruto briefly smirked slightly, before he settled on a neutral look once more. Indeed. And to think she still has 9 lives to use, the blonde responded, a hint of amusement in his gaze. Naruto and Hanabi maintained a comfortable silence as they walked down the streets of the village. Finally, the two reached an intersection, and that is where they stopped. Well, little Hyuga, it's been a pleasure meeting you, but this is where we part, Naruto stated, voice neutral. Hanabi nodded. It's been a pleasure, as well, Uzumaki-san, she said politely. Giving Hanabi a final nod, the blonde turned and headed off towards the direction of the red light district. Hanabi, seeing the blonde leave, faced the opposite direction before she resumed her exploration. She was sure that her escort wouldn't mind if she were out of their sight for a bit longer. It had nothing to do with the fact that she felt a little mischievous today, not at all. Meanwhile, Naruto kept his posture of cold neutrality as he walked through the red light district. The living members of the red light district were a lot different than the other villagers who lived in the more healthy areas. Instead, the members of the red light district never glared at the blonde, nor did they ever ignore him. At times they were friendly with the blonde. Not overly friendly, but more along the lines of they merely acknowledged the blonde's presence. When the QB attack occurred, the red light district was not too damaged from the attack. Thus, the people of the red light district had no need to hate the blonde. Instead, they merely saw a boy trying to live his life just as they were. And just like them, Naruto was considered the scum of society. Despite his antisocial attitude, Naruto knew that if he ever needed help, he could depend on the citizens of the district. However, Naruto believed he would never need anyone's help. He would prefer to do things on his own. Besides, the only person that Naruto would ever allow to help him is Alucard, as the no-life queen was all he needed. This line of thinking pleased Alucard immensely. Entering the door to his apartment complex, Naruto bore witness to the sight of Alucard's familiars working endlessly to keep the building clean. The multi-eyed hellhounds held trash bags and cleaning supplies in their mouths as their feet patted against the floor. Your familiars never cease to amaze me with their work ethic, Naruto mused, turning his head to look at Alucard as she rose from his shadow. Familiars who can't even do this much aren't worth their salt, master. Alucard started with a grin. Only the best is worthy of your master. I will not accept anything less. Giving Alucard a warm smile that warmed Alucard's cold heart, the blonde stepped further into his apartment, taking the stairs up to his room on the top floor. An hour or so later, Naruto stopped changing the channel to his TV as Alucard sat next to him on the couch, the long black-haired vampire queen handing her master a bowl of popcorn. She raised a hand to tilt her white hat, fixing it, as she looked at her master with loving crimson eyes. Her white attire completely contradicts her dark nature. What movie are we going to watch, master? It is horror, action, comedy perhaps? She asked, grinning, as she listed some of her favorite genres. Naruto increased the volume of his TV slightly. It is horror, of course, the blonde replied. You know how much I love horror movies, he stated. Alucard grinned, remembering how she had gotten her master in love with horror movies. One did not spend several years of their life with Alucard without taking some of her quirks. For Naruto, it was her love for scary horror movies. When the movie began, the two settled into a comfortable silence. As the movie progressed, halfway through the movie, Alucard tilted her head with a disturbing grin. The things that humans thought up with their imaginations. Seriously, a teddy bear that comes to life due to an ancient curse, and because of that curse the teddy bear has a vicious thirst for blood, as it randomly kills unsuspecting victims. Not to mention that the bear would suddenly gain a grin nearly similar to hers when she's killing something. Alucard only had one thought, as she watched the rest of the movie. Where could she find a killer teddy bear? Because she wanted one. When the movie finished, Alucard merely looked at her master with crimson eyes as he stood and stretched his limbs, yawning as he did so. Well, that movie was peculiar, Naruto murmured. The concept of a teddy coming to life and killing people, while interesting, quickly became rather boring after a while, he said. Alucard hummed. I enjoyed the concept behind it, master. In fact, I dare say I'm actually considering getting a killer doll of my own, the vampire queen stated. I just need to find a perfect doll and give it an improvement. She smirked widely, revealing her gleaming white fangs. Naruto gave a bland look, his eyebrow raising. If I wasn't already used to your antics, your curiosity, and quirks may have frightened me long ago, he murmured. Hearing him, Alucard merely gave an innocent grin, as innocent as she could look anyway. Her gleaming fangs, blood-red eyes that gleamed with cruel mischief gave herself away. Anyways, I'm heading to bed. Enjoy the rest of your night, Alucard, Naruto said, turning and heading towards his bedroom. Pleasant dreams, master, Alucard responded, giving her master a slight wave. Naruto gave Alucard a small smile as he wished her good night and closed the door to his bedroom. Alucard turned off the TV and shut off the lights to the living room. With nothing to do, Alucard merely stood in the middle of the room. The darkness draped over her form as she stood there with a grin on her face. Finally, after what seemed like hours, Alucard finally moved. She looked out the window, her eyes gleaming hungrily. Humming for a moment, Alucard's lower body was slowly enveloped by the shadows. I'm gonna go for a walk, she said to no one in particular. Slowly, the shadows began engulfing Alucard's form, her grin remaining, as she was enveloped completely. She sank into the ground, her shadowy state merging with other shadows as she used her favorite method of travel. Through the shadows, she moved throughout the entire village, passing through every single house and leaving several of her rat familiars as she felt mischievous. When she passed through the houses of Ino and Sakura, however, she decided to leave a larger version of her rat familiars on their bedside. And just for the heck of it, she gave them a nightmare. The screams they gave when they woke up were pleasant. The shrieks of horror and terror they gave when they saw her presence made her cackle madly. Eventually, Alucard got bored of breaking into people's houses. In her eyes, it wasn't really breaking in, as she used shadows to enter their homes. There wasn't any law about that. To sate her newfound boredom, Alucard decided to take a stroll through the woods. After an hour or two, she came across an interesting sight. Kneeling on his knees, as he panted, was the form of Mizuki, or, as Alucard enjoyed calling him, Dead Man Walking. In front of the Chunin was a large scroll, and from the stolen memories of the few jonin she consumed, Alucard recognized the scroll as the Forbidden Scroll of Sealing. With a growing smirk, as her eyes gained a vicious glint, the white-clad no-life queen made her way behind the Chunin. "Hey there, that's an awfully large scroll you got there," she said with a large grin. Giving off an unmanly yelp of surprise, Mizuki sprang up and backtracked away from the white-clothed vampire. His stance took a hostile position as he glared. "Who the fuck are you, Kool-Aid?" Alucard answered with a large grin. Mizuki blinked. "The fuck is Kool-Aid?" he demanded. Alucard merely grinned. "Exactly." Shaking his head, Mizuki glared at the white-clad girl, a smirk coming across his features. "I don't know you the fuck you are, and I don't care. This actually gives me the perfect chance to put what I learned from the Forbidden Scroll to good use," he shouted with manic glee. "Oh?" Alucard murmured with a raised eyebrow. "That's right. With this scroll, I now have unlimited power." "Uh-huh. And with this power, the elemental nations shall tremble at my feet as I conquer it," Mizuki shouted with a mad grin. "Neat," Alucard responded, idly brushing a few of her bangs out of her eyes. "But first, before I can do any of that," with a sadistic smirk, Mizuki sneered at Alucard, "I am going to kill you." "That would be intimidating, if you were intimidating." Alucard started with a menacing giggle. Surprised, Mizuki took a step back. "Are you mocking me?" he asked with anger in his tone. "Oh no," Alucard began. No PFT, yeah." With said, she thrusted her arm forward, and Mizuki couldn't react in time, as her arm morphing into a shadow, as it struck towards him at shocking speeds. One moment, Mizuki was standing, the next, he was suspended in the air, his chest pierced directly through his heart by a tendril made entirely of shadows. Choking on his own blood, Mizuki's form was brought closer to Alucard, and the no-life queen smirked widely at his suffering form. "Sup?" she asked casually. Mizuki gurgled. "You know, normally, I would have eaten you by now, but something tells me you'll taste terrible," she said with a smirk. "So instead I'll just take this." She took the Forbidden Scroll, stashed away within her shadows. "And now I'll just leave your dead corpse here for the wild animals to feed upon, okay?" She grinned, patting Mizuki's cheek, as the light faded from his eyes. Seeing no argument, Alucard dropped the corpse, and eagerly prepared to travel back to her master through the shadows. She grinned, as several predators began to slowly make their way towards Mizuki's body. With a giggle, she melted into the shadows, idly thinking to herself that she had a very good walk. "So you were taking a walk through the woods?" Naruto asked, hands folded in front of him, as he stared at Alucard with an unreadable expression. "Yep. You ran into Mizuki with the Forbidden Scroll." "Yep. You killed him quickly, and took the scroll, leaving his dead corpse to be eaten by the wild animals of said forest." "Yep. After that you returned here, left the scroll on the table, and cuddled with me, as I slept for the remainder of the night." Nodding eagerly, Alucard gave a feigned smile. Naruto looked at Alucard blankly for a few moments. "All of this from an enthusiastic walk?" he asked. "Very enthusiastic walk," Alucard corrected. "Right." Naruto deadpanned, idly wondering if, perhaps, he had been giving Alucard too much leeway. "Nah, she knew when to be a good girl. Ordinarily, I would command you to return the scroll, but seeing as no one suspects where it is, I see no harm in borrowing it until I've learned all I can from it," Naruto stated, unfolding the scroll and reading it. Alucard's grin grew as she took to her master's side, her crimson orbs honing into a rather interesting technique on the scroll. "Master, perhaps this technique shall interest you," she said, pointing towards the one she was gazing upon. Blinking, Naruto's eyes honed in on the one she was pointing at. He raised an eyebrow in interest and surprise. "Oh, such a curious technique." Naruto smirked. It was a dark smirk, one filled with amusement that only Alucard could possess. It made Alucard feel a pleasant tingle down her spine, watching her master smirk like that, as she gained a very similar smirk on her lips. "Edo Tensei, interesting indeed," Naruto murmured, Alucard's eyes flashing scarlet, as her grin grew. Naruto idly tapped his fingers on his desk in slight irritation. His patience, which was usually vast seeing as he took Alucard's antics in stride, was wearing very thin. He swore that if his Jonin sensei did not enter the room within the next minute, he was going to allow Alucard to have as much fun as possible with her new toy. Oh yes, he could already imagine the torture Alucard would put that jonin through. Naruto smirked in dark amusement. Oh yes, it would be so beautiful. Hatake Kakashi was a man whose mask of indifference was so good, even the Sandaime had a little difficulty in knowing what the man was thinking. Not many things could unnerve a jonin of his caliber, so when he opened the door and entered the empty classroom to meet his new apprentice, he was quite unnerved. Naruto was staring at him with a painfully neutral glare, blank eyes expressing nothing but indifference and a small hint of distaste. Ordinarily, he would have been amused at such a genin attempting to intimidate him in such a manner, but there was something about the blonde right now that was unnerving. Suddenly, Kakashi felt cold. It was as if the literal personification of death was hanging just over his shoulder. He shivered slightly, as a bead of cold sweat rolled down his neck. I dislike having my time wasted at Hatake-san. The next time you are late I cannot be held responsible for what will occur to you. However, I will say that it will not be good for your health. Naruto's tone was neutral and curt. He said it all in a matter-of-fact manner, as if he were stating a fact. Wordlessly, Kakashi nodded, and he sighed in slight relief, as the feeling of death subsided. The cold feeling remained, however. Meet me up on the roof, Naruto. With that said, Kakashi promptly disappeared within a puff of smoke. He didn't know what was going on. All he knew was that he wanted to get the hell out of there. As he disappeared, he never noticed Alucard standing behind him, a sick twisted grin on her face, as the shadows around her twitched in agitation. You did good in restraining yourself, Alucard. Alucard twitched. It took a majority of my willpower to not kill the man where he stood, master, she freely admitted. Wordlessly, Naruto stood, and proceeded to exit the empty classroom. Without uttering a word, Alucard sank herself within her master's shadow, as he moved forward. As he progressed through the hall, and made his way up the stairs, Naruto's mind flashed back as to how this all happened. He had entered the classroom, as expected of him when team assignments were handed out. The blonde will admit that he didn't pay attention to the various names that were called. Why should he? It's not like he truly cared who his potential partners were. As long as they didn't interfere with his plans, then he would fight beside them until they proved to be a threat to his plans. Besides, no doubt Alucard had taken the liberty of listening to who was placed in what teams. So if anything, Alucard would be all too happy to inform him of the teams. It was when he was called that he truly paid attention. He was not surprised to hear that Kakashi was his teacher. He was a little surprised to hear that he was to be Kakashi's apprentice, but that surprise faded quickly. Now he had to deal with Hatake's unacceptable tardiness, and his tendency to ignore people around him. Unacceptable. Naruto knew one thing. If Hatake did not take him seriously, then Alucard may end up with another soul to add to her growing collection. You took your time in getting up here, Kakashi stated aloofly, as he leaned on the railing, his eyes honed in on his book. You took your time in arriving here, Naruto calmly retorted. Touché. Not even bothering to remove his eyes from his book, Kakashi continued, why don't we introduce ourselves? It'll make for easier cooperation if we know a little about one another. I shall only participate when you decide that my apprenticeship to you is more important than your literature. Fair enough. The masked jonin put his book away, making sure to memorize his place, before giving all his attention to his apprentice. As you know, I am Hatake Kakashi. I will be your sensei from henceforth, whilst you are now my apprentice. As you know, apprenticeships are rare. The only apprenticeships have been Orochimaru, Jiraiya of the Sannin, and of course our Sandaime whose masters were the Nidaime and Shodaime. As of now, this is the fourth apprenticeship sanctioned by Konoha. I am well aware. Good. Now, since this is an apprenticeship, the next half of the genin exam is unneeded. However, I still want to see what you can do, so tomorrow, I will be training 18 at 8 am. Can I expect you to arrive on time, or shall I arrive there at 10? Kakashi eyed Naruto for a moment, his mind flashing back to Anko's threat after the blonde became his apprentice. Listen up, and listen up good Hatake, Anko had hissed. I wanted to teach the brat. I wanted to be the one the brat called sensei, and I wanted to be the one that could brag to other jonins about my brat, so the least you could do is take the brat seriously. If you don't take the brat seriously, then I promise you Hatake, I am going to break into your apartment, take your precious collection of books, and burn them to the fucking ground. Evidently, Kakashi decided to take the blonde seriously. He may have been 2 hours late to meet the blonde, but, as they say, old habits die hard. Still, Kakashi promised himself that he will really take the blonde seriously, and that's what he intended to do. Just in case though, he placed several traps around his apartment, more specifically, around his book collection. You could never be too careful when you're in a village full of ninja who are fully capable of fulfilling their threats. Hooray for paranoia. Be there at 10. With that said, Kakashi disappeared with a blur of movement. At the very least he seems to be taking me a little seriously. Naruto admitted a twinge of curiosity due to Kakashi's actions. Let us hope so, master. Should he not, I shall take immense pleasure into making him into another familiar. Alucard spoke, rising from her master's shadow. Not answering, Naruto turned, and made his way down the stairs. Come Alucard, it's time to go back home. Preparations must be made for tomorrow. Grinning, Alucard wordlessly sunk back into Naruto's shadow. Kakashi Hatake of the Sharingan was going to be very surprised tomorrow. Very surprised. The end. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.